Hi, I'm Craig Andersen, and welcome to another episode of EPMS Tech Talk Interview Series. We're here today with Jim Kauffman from Grafika. How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Well, I'm doing great. Thanks for coming. We really appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
So, Jim, as you know, the purpose of today's interview is to help our viewers get some information or get some feedback from you folks on the process that you went through in selecting an MIS system. But before we do that, why don't you tell us a little bit about Grafika?
Sure. Grafika has been around for about 45 years. Obviously, we're a printer. We focus on tags, labels, packaging, and a lot of wall decor products. We have multiple print disciplines. We do offset, screen, and flexo printing.
Very good. How long have you guys been around?
A little over 45 years.
Wow, that's a long time. Well, that's great. So the next thing we want to do is talk a little bit about the process you went through. When we first started working with you, you guys seem to have a pretty extensive process that you use to find and select a system. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what that process was?
Sure. The first thing was deciding, did we need to get a new system? We had had a system in place for almost 25 years, highly customized environment both within the system and around it. And once we made that decision, then I think the next most important step was we spent a lot of time defining the criteria of any new system that we absolutely had to have. And that process took a while. And once we did that, then we started to peruse the internet, vendors of ours who knew of other systems, and kind of came up with a large list of systems to investigate.
Yeah.
From there, we kind of did the kind of top level search, look at their websites, look at their brochures, make some simple calls, and that really quickly weeded out the number of systems we were going to concentrate on. And then it was time to get in contact with the salespeople and have them come talk to us and do WebEx demos, which then weeded it down to two, of which obviously EPMS was one of them. And that's when we said, okay, we need to get people in on site, learn a little bit about Grafika and what we really want to do with an ERP system in order to make our selection. And that process took the longest because there was a lot to go through. We had a lot of custom stuff. We wanted to make sure anything that was new did everything that we wanted it to do.
Yeah. No, before we get too far ahead, obviously you had some systems in place. Was it more than one system or was it a system?
It was more than one, with one of them being from the ERP software vendor, and all the other systems were ours, were custom, in order to make up for all the shortcomings of that system.
Okay. So was that system falling short for you? Did you grow out of it? What was the deciding factor to make you want to switch or try to find something else?
We were certainly running out of options as far as how far we could customize it. The system was running slow, which was becoming a problem. And there wasn't really an easy upgrade path without us going through a year's worth of customizations moving forward. And plus, we just didn't feel that the software vendor was necessarily moving forward as well. And so we were really concerned about that, the longevity of the vendor itself.
Okay. So you said that you basically you didn't have a consultant helping you find a system, right?
Correct. We did all the legwork on our own.
Your own. So basically you did that by what? Going to shows, internet searches?
A little bit going to shows and a lot of internet searches,
Yeah.
which actually was easier than I had thought it would be.
And you started out with how many?
We probably had 12 or 13, I think was probably
the
big list to start with.
Yeah.
But like I said, that quickly weeded down to maybe about 5 or 6. And that's when we started the more in-depth talking with salespeople and people within each of the companies.
Okay. So before you got to the process of actually talking to salespeople, what were the factors that allowed you to whittle down that list of 12 to the 4 or 5 that you had remaining?
Kind of referring back to that, what are the things that we absolutely want to see in a system? It could have been something like we wanted to have integrated accounting. You quickly go through and find, and there's 5 of them that don't have an integrated accounting package. Boom, they come right off the list.
Okay.
So criteria.
So some of them dropped off pretty easily and pretty quickly.
Right.
Okay. So is it true to say that probably one of the best things that a company can do when looking for a system is really to have their mindset in such a way that they know what it exactly is they're looking for?
I think absolutely. Otherwise, I think you find it too easy to be distracted by bells and whistles of fancy programs. We came from a system that was a character-based system, kind of back like it would be back in the DOS days. And by knowing exactly what we were looking for feature-wise, it makes it real easy to compare and refer what you see to what you need.
Okay, well, that's good. So now we're down to four, right? The last four. So what were the processes put into play to now start to narrow that remaining group down?
That's when we really got into a lot of WebExes, sitting there and going through the different modules of each of the systems and kind of comparing it to what we do now or what we want to do in the future. And also having salespeople come in and talk to us and spending more time. So it was, multiple hours worth of time spent with each of these companies to kind of get it down to that final two.
Yeah, well, good. So do you have any before we get to our next questions, do you have any key factors that you would like to share with everybody that helped in that process? I mean, just some things that you did, or at least maybe it's a mindset that you had um, that helped you really narrow those down.
Again, it comes back to, I think it was the mindset was not to stray from what we wanted. We kind of had this mantra that we want to add X million dollars of sales without adding any more people. So we want to make sure that whatever system we have enables us to do more faster
Yep, so you can handle your
than
growth.
what we were
Yeah.
doing. So that's how we would kind of compare the things we were seeing. If we saw something, it's like, okay, does that take away keystrokes? Does that take away paperwork? What processes get replaced to help us do things faster, to help people to do more in less time?
Okay, good. So did you have just a small committee of people that were part of this decision? Did you engage multiple people within your organization?
We
How did you handle that part of it?
Yeah, sorry. We engaged a lot of people, or what I consider a lot of people. Best thing and one of the things I would offer is advice is don't let this sit in the hands of the IS department, which is where I come from. You got to engage other people in the company, the people who are going to be responsible for using
Yes.
the system. I mean, we're responsible for supporting the system, not necessarily using the system. And that was key in the decision making because they're the ones who really know if you get into estimating, how is estimating going to work for us? They live estimating. They
Yeah.
can tell better than I can.
Yeah. Well, plus you want to engage them because you want them to buy into the decision. And like I think you said earlier, if you try to shove a system down the team's throat, they tend to resist it.
Right.
Even
exactly.
though the resistance may not be justified, they tend to resist it. So that's probably a good recommendation to try to get a group of people involved that are actually going to be using it as part of this decision factor, right?
Absolutely. And we've already seen that within our company, just talking to people who haven't even seen the system. They've either talked to us or talked to some of the other people who are involved in the decision making, and they're getting excited because they know something different is coming. They know enhanced capabilities are coming, and that sort of attitude is going to go a long way, I think, when it comes time to implementation for us.
Well, that's good. So on the other end of that spectrum, how involved was upper management in this decision?
Very involved. Obviously, from the get go, they were the ones who said, yes, we need to get something and we understand and we're going to do it. So, right away, we had that commitment. And from that point, we just kept them involved in the loop and brought them into some of the decision making meetings because they want to make sure it's the right thing, too.
Okay, well, that's good because so now you got buy-in from the top, you got buy-in from the technical resources like you folks, the IT department, and now you also have buy-in from the users that are going to be using it. So, what were the deciding factors that brought you to the EPMS and the enterprise application?
There was a number of them. Once we got to that final two and you started looking at the systems we were looking at one point we were like, I don't know how we're going to make the decision. And then once you got that group of people together, started running through the pluses and minuses, the decision became a lot easier. We liked the total integration from the RFQ all the way through to shipping and invoicing. Data is available all the way through the process, and it's easy to get to. So that was very nice. EPMS or Enterprise has a very clean user interface, which turned out to be a bigger deciding factor than we had anticipated because we had to consider, what is the day-to-day user, the person who spends hours in front of this computer, going to be doing when they're clicking and moving around. And the interface actually we thought was a positive experience compared to some of the others that we looked at. And then there were other factors, well, the integrated accounting that I had mentioned earlier, and other factors such as the company itself. We felt that EPMS was genuinely interested in making the software work for us as opposed to us working with the software. And that went a long way in making people feel comfortable that this is a company we can work with.
Yeah, well, it's good. We work very hard at that.
Yeah, and so far we haven't been disappointed. It's been real good so far. And we're still early in the integration process. Plus the fact that to know that the company is looking forward. You're always looking for what are the next set of enhancements we're going to get and how quickly do we get them out. So you know that if you see something that maybe you hope is going to be changed someday, we have a voice to get it into your hands and then possibly see it in a future release.
Well, that's good. Great to hear. So you've now made the decision. So in hindsight, now that you've gone through that process, is there any things that you would give as advice as far as watchouts or things that you want to suggest that they definitely pay attention to during the process?
Yeah, one being again, you got to get that management buy-in from the start. Involve more people. It can't just be the IS department. It can't just be any one small group of people. You want a number of eyes on it, considering a number of factors, and you want them when that final decision comes in. When we made the final decision, there was probably 10 people in the room.
Okay.
Going, yes.
So were these people the key people from the different departments?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you don't, I mean, unfortunately, you can't get everybody involved because then there's just too many people involved in the decision factor. But you had all the key people from all your various departments involved in the decision.
Right. Pretty much everyone who had a look and had a say in the whole discovery process.
That's good. All right. So now we're at the implementation phase. You are now here actually at our office for the second phase of your training, which is the accountant training. You've already gone through the formal training on the core modules, and you've gone through all the various primary setup and implementation phases. Can you give us a little feedback on how that all went?
Yeah, I think it all went very well. Obviously, the being able to use WebExes is huge because you can get a group of people, like on our end, all to be able to get the same training. Everyone here has been real helpful in making sure that we get everything set up, basically like one system to the other to make sure we have everything we need. And of course, now we're at the point where we've got kind of the trainers set up where we have a vast knowledge, relatively vast for us, knowledge of what's going on, and we're going to move to the next step, which is start to train some of our users. We know we can come back, we can still get more WebExes, and we have people to help us through the process, which makes us not so nervous because we know it's still a big task ahead of us, but we don't feel too bad because we know you guys have been through it and can help us get there.
And how do you find working with the team, the support team, accessing them and getting their attention and everything?
It's great. I mean, the support website and so on that you guys have set up is real easy to use. Everyone's very responsive. There's the email, there's the phone. We certainly have had no problems communicating with anyone. And it's always
that's kind of like our MIS system. Without that, we wouldn't be able to really keep track of everything. It's important. It's an important system for us. Well, that's good. I'm glad you've had a really good experience. So one of the things I wanted to kind of touch base on a little bit, because during the implementation phase, we do many implementations, and the companies vary in size, dynamics, internal workflows, and just in the products and services that they deliver. One of the things that we see sometimes, implementations that go smoothly are implementations where both parties are open-minded to the ultimate goal, and where these systems are developed for the masses. So every company brings their own little unique niche or procedural workflow issue that wasn't necessarily designed in the application. And I'm sure you've come across some of those. So how do you feel, or do you have any advice as to how to handle those from the customer perspective?
Well, fortunately with EPMS, there are some options, and there's two ways to attack it. One is, we can't be so narrow-minded as to think there aren't some procedures on our end that we're going to need to change to work with the new system, and we realize that. And then there's the other side where we can suggest something, saying, well, we've done this for X amount of years, and explain the reasons why, and we know there's an ear on the other end who goes, yeah, you know what, that makes sense. We can either do some sort of customization for you, or you know what, we're going to include that in something that's going to come out in a couple months with a product, just kind of sit tight. And that's good to know that we have kind of both options to attack, and you're willing to help either way.
Yeah. So the key is being a little open-minded, knowing that you may have to change some procedures on your end to adapt to the new system, but you also know that you have a conduit to communicate possibly a consideration for a change in the system.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's good. So I'm glad with that. So one of the other things that we were looking at is how is the enterprise program from what you have seen so far? How do you see that benefit in your company currently, in the near future, I should say, and also in the long-term future, as opposed to what you had in place before?
Near term, once everything's implemented, I think the big thing our users are going to get out of it is the quick availability of data and the vast amount of it that exists. Our old system had a lot of data, but it was hard to get at. They would have to constantly see the IS department to get even just little pieces of data. Now everyone's going to be able to see so much quickly. It's going to help them to be able to make decisions faster and just execute their daily tasks faster. Also, the fact that you can schedule the whole workflow. We did not have a comprehensive scheduling system that included everything in our production facility. Yeah. This does, which is going to be great. And the viewability that it provides all the way out to a salesman out in the field, which is something we don't have now. And it's real time, which is something important to us because people are making decisions in real time every day.
Yeah. Now, you've also come on board while we're in the process of wrapping up our beta program on our CRM module. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how much you've poked around in it or actually looked at implementing it, but what have you seen so far and what do you think of it?
Well, we've just started to play around with it actually last week before I got here. And the first thing that comes to us is the fact that the data we're putting in and that the salespeople and anyone else see is going to be the same data that's, again, involved throughout the whole process. Yeah. It's one database of information. And the salespeople are definitely excited to use it. We're going to actually have our CSRs and order writers using it as well to be able to see data quickly, put notes in, and manage the customers from that one easy-to-use screen.
Well, excellent. Well, hopefully we'll have to get some more feedback on it after you've really had a chance to put it through its ringer.
Yeah, we're going to start playing with it next week, so it should be fun.
Good. And so anything else you'd like to add? Any other suggestions in this process? Because this is a big challenge for a lot of companies. I mean, this is not easy selecting a system. And obviously, when you do go through this process, you want to make the right decision that's going to last you for many, many years.
Right.
You can't afford to do this every 5-10 years.
Right, exactly. From a time and cost standpoint,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the big thing, again, goes back to getting the buy-in from more than the IS department. I think that's huge. Second, really make sure you know what you're looking for. Stick to the features that you know you want to have, the capabilities that you know you want to have. And also, don't rush the process. I think if you rush it too much and don't put in the required analysis of what you're looking at, you could end up misstepping and getting something you're just not happy with.
Yeah. And that's true with an implementation too. Sometimes if your go live is too aggressive, you will tend to implement it in haste.
Right.
And sometimes have to go back and revisit things, which adds time and cost to the whole process. So you want to be realistic about the whole process.
Absolutely. And especially in an environment like ours where certain modules and capabilities, when they come online, it's going to have to be go live. It's not a let's practice with this and see how it goes. So we want to make sure we put a lot of forethought into it and testing into it before certain things end up going live.
Yeah, well, very good. So one final partner advice I'd like to give is now that you're a new customer and you're starting to come to the close of your implementation, you're just going to want to stay in touch with us. You're going to want to work with us on a regular basis. The customers that use our system the best are the customers that are constantly working with us, trying to figure out how they can get the most out of it. So that's my suggestion going forward.
Will do. Appreciate it.
So Jim, thank you for taking this time to do this interview with us, and I want to thank Grafika for becoming a customer of ours, and we're looking forward to a nice long-term relationship.
My pleasure. So are we.
Well, thanks. Well, I'm Craig Andersen, and this was another episode of EPMS Tech Talk. Be sure to watch for more to come.